Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show, our last of the week, but we always save the best for last. Want to say hello to all the people joining the chat, the Pewter people, as we like to call them, as we get ready for another fantastic show. Earlier in the week, we talked about where the Bucs are most stacked on the offensive side of the football. But as we know, defense wins championships. The Buccaneers specifically have always been all about winning with defense. So today, we are going to spend this afternoon talking about where the Bucs are most stacked on defense. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from pewterreport.com, Adam Slavon. Adam, how are we doing?
Matt, we're doing great. And we're doing great because it's a Thursday, which means you and I get to be on the show interacting with the Pewter people. And you mentioned defense and that it wins championships. For the Bucs especially, they've had some great defenses in the past. And really excited to look at how the defense kind of looks and the outlook heading into this season.
Yeah, for an overall outlook of the defense, I'm much more excited about this unit than I was probably a season ago. And I think it just speaks to general manager Jason Light, and obviously Todd Bowles had a lot of input of just fixing a lot of the areas of where there were issues last year. I don't want to mention any positions specifically because we're going to kind of break it down position by position like we did with the offense. But with all of that said, we kind of asked this question on other episodes, and I brought it up to a couple people. I'm not sure if I brought it up to you, but I'll bring it up again. Where do you feel more comfortable about this team? On the offensive side of the football or the defensive side of the football?
I remember, I think you did pose this question to me, and I wanted to say I said the offense. And
yeah, that's right.
I think that there is more optimism on that side of the ball, just with all the new pieces. Playmaker-wise, Jalen McMillan, Bucky Irving. The offense should have more continuity heading into this season, and for that reason, I think that Baker is going to be a lot more comfortable and that there's more of a floor there and perhaps even a higher ceiling, but that's not to brush off the defense, and Todd Bowles is on the screen there. Todd Bowles always makes the best of the pieces that he has on the defensive side of the ball, and even though people from the outside may say outside linebacker looks weak, there actually is a lot of optimism in who the Bucs have in the room. So I think the offense, there is more optimism there, but you can never count out a Todd Bowles defense.
That is very true. As A. Ruiz says, Yaya is stacked, of course. Yaya has a physical specimen of a human being, certainly is stacked. And Nathan Elliott says, hello, Senor Adam Slavon. And Bat W also says Vita is the stack. Yeah, there are some absolute hosses on defense, particularly outside linebacker and defensive line. To answer the question that I just asked you, I said it was defense, and I'll kind of make it short and sweet as we move the show along. But the reason why I would go with the defense just is because I think there's less question marks overall, where the offense, there is a lot to worry about and have skepticism for when it comes to that interior offensive line. And, will the left guard position kind of figure itself out? And can Cody Mauch take that next step? Where I think kind of the biggest question on the defensive side is kind of, what does KJ Britt look like in a full season as a starter? And is Logan Hall the guy that the Bucs can kind of plug and play over at defense, or do they have to address that, next season in the draft or free agency? And if that's the biggest issue for the Buccaneers, I think overall that's a pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah, I would have to agree that there probably is less worries on the defensive side of the ball. There's still a lot of very established players there, kind of as you mentioned. And then that guy.
So, yeah, I can never get enough of Yaya Diaby. Like, just watching him at practice, watching fans go crazy over him. He was not built in a lab, as he was asked by someone at a news station during one of the last days at minicamp. Yaya's going to factor into this a lot. But does that mean outside linebacker is most stacked? No, not necessarily, Adam. You and I before the show were kind of talking about how we rank it. And we both had our own separate rankings, but they were very, very similar. So we're kind of coming up with one conglomerate of it. But in terms of most stacked for the Bucs on defense, I think we have to start with their star player, which of course is in the secondary, and that would be none other than Antoine Winfield Jr. So, Adam, I will ask you, along with Antoine, why is safety, in our opinion, in your opinion, the most stacked position? Why can the safety say to the rest of the defensive groups, they are not like us, as Kendrick Lamar was saying last?
Yeah. Kendrick Lamar said that quite a few times, and it's showing Compton.
5 times.
Yeah, got to check that out. But looking at the safety position, the most stacked obviously starts with the most talented, and there's without a doubt that Antoine Winfield Jr. really leads that effort. But you look at the rest of the safety room. You have Jordan Whitehead coming back probably as a better player than he was during his first stint in Tampa Bay. He's going to be a high-level starter, somebody that really serves as an upgrade over Ryan Neal last year. And you know what you get out of Jordan Whitehead. A very sure tackler, very physical player, and also has kind of shown some coverage versatility last year with the Jets. He had 4 interceptions, so kind of showed that he can be a playmaker. And then beyond just those two, you have Tyke Smith, who the Bucs are pretty high on. We've kind of had the chance to speak with him a little bit after he was drafted, and you can tell that he's a very high IQ player. He played at a Georgia defense that really asked a lot of him. So when you look at Tyke Smith, the hope is that he can kind of be like a Mike Edwards and kind of be that third safety, that playmaker that the defense really had back in 2020 when they went and won the Super Bowl. So you have those three. And then Kayvon Merriweather, he kind of gained Todd Bowles' trust towards the end of last season, did really well in special teams and kind of got some snaps. And then Christian Izien could factor in there. And Marcus Banks, for an undrafted free agent, there's upside there. See, all those guys, obviously, it starts at the top with Antoine Winfield Jr., but there's a lot of quality players behind him. And so for that reason, I think that's why it's the most stacked.
Yeah, as if the room wasn't already good enough, Todd Bowles goes to the podium the last day of Bucs minicamp, and it's like, oh, who stood out to you? And of course, he mentions a safety. And, you know, if there's any young player looking to get a start in their career and make a name for themselves, there's no better coach to work with than Todd Bowles. I mean, he helped mold Winfield as a rookie, obviously at corner as well with Jamel Dean and now Zion McCollum. But it's so funny too. You mentioned Christian Izien. I mean, this guy was starting at nickel corner last year for the Bucs, and now at best he's your 4th string safety. And obviously, Tyke Smith will probably factor into playing into the slot. But when you have a guy that was a starter last year becomes your 4th string, that's a great jump up. I talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show, Adam, but when it comes to Antoine Winfield Jr., I don't know if he'll be able to replicate the 6 forced fumbles, which led all of the NFL. That's correct, ladies and gentlemen. Not one player in the NFL had more forced fumbles than Antoine Winfield Jr. And I love when people in the chat say, all pro Antoine. We say it on Twitter. We use it in photos on Instagram. I think it's great when it's in the chat as well. I forgot who put it up before. But Shaggy saying all effing pro AWJ. But just because Winfield may not have 2 touchdown-saving forced fumbles, I think there's going to be even more special ways that he helps impact the Bucs for the better next season. And because Whitehead is there and Tyke Smith, who we'll talk about in just a moment, because these guys are there as well, because they got better in other areas too, like outside linebacker in my position, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that's only going to help out Antoine, because last year, a lot of it was on his shoulders. Like that Carolina game, if he doesn't stop that touchdown, who knows what happens? Like the Bucs only won 9-0. They did not dominate. They did not obliterate the lowly Carolina Panthers. And Antoine Winfield Jr. makes that play. He also made a big play early on in that game in the playoffs against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think there's still going to be so much required of Antoine Winfield Jr., but even just taking a little less of the pressure off of him will make him go that much further. And then Jordan Whitehead, I love the physicality he's going to bring. There's going to be a little bit of a different attitude for the Buccaneers on defense, but I think it's for the better because he is physical, and now all of a sudden he now all of a sudden he's taking the ball away. I mean, that infamous 3-interception game against Josh Allen, the interception he had against the Raiders, I remember specifically because one, my dad was at the game, and two, I did a prop bet of Jordan Whitehead to record an interception, and he got it. So I appreciate Jordan Whitehead for that one. So there's so much to love about the Bucs at safety, but Tyke Smith, Adam, I think he's got a great opportunity to end up being the best draft pick that the Bucs took this year, and that's including Jalen McMillan, who they drafted at wide receiver, who's going to play a huge role, and obviously Graham Barton, who was their first-round pick. But I'm telling you, and you were at practice, so you saw it as well, the instinct, being able to break on a ball before the ball is even thrown. He has instinct and anticipation that makes the great players so special to watch. And I'm not comparing him to a Hall of Famer yet. He's never taken a snap in shoulder pads in the NFL. But Tyke Smith is, I think, going to be such an exciting player.
Yeah, definitely kind of overlooked even in the Bucs draft class because a lot of the excitement's towards Jalen McMillan, Graham Barton, but Tyke Smith, he's going to play. Regardless that the Bucs have two safeties and Christian Izzian's still on hand at the nickel position, they're going to find ways to get Tyke Smith involved. And it'll be really exciting because you kind of mentioned how Antoine Winfield Jr. kind of shouldered that safety room last season. Going from last season to this season, now it being the most stacked room, guys are going to be moving all over the place. Antoine Winfield Jr., he's going to be roaming around because he can. Jordan Whitehead, he's going to kind of hold it down. And then Tyke Smith, they can kind of plug and play him anywhere too. He played at nickel at West Virginia and at Georgia, and now he can play in the star role, move to safety. Todd Bowles is going to love him. And not just because he's a Georgia player. I think that he's going to be really impactful. And he's really going to make his mark as soon as his rookie year. I know Josh Capo, we recently did an article kind of talking about who's going to be the next first-time Pro Bowler for the Bucs. And he mentioned Tyke Smith. And there's good reason. He has a lot of potential to be really impactful.
All Todd Bowles really asks for is versatility, and he's got tons and tons of versatility. And we got a comment from JB who says, fingers crossed both Antoine Winfield Jr. and Whitehead stay healthy this season. Yeah, I mean, obviously you want that every single year for every single player, but again, that's why depth is so important. If they're out for extended periods of time, it may turn into a little bit of a problem. But if there's one game where Whitehead's out or Winfield's out and Tyke Smith has to start at safety for an entire game, I feel pretty good about it. If Christian Izzian has to, or even Merriweather, Merriweather was thrown into some roles last year. I'm not in love with it by any means, but I think the Bucs can survive for a couple of games. Now, A. Ruiz with the comment, how is Tyke better than Izzian? Great question. And, you guys have been awesome in the comments so far. Just a reminder, we can't get to every single one. So if you super chat us, you get to cut the line and we make sure that we get to your question and comment. Tyke obviously had way more production in college from both at West Virginia and Georgia. More instinct going after the football. He's bigger than Christian Izzian. That's kind of one of the biggest knocks on Izzian is that he just doesn't have the size. Izzian has great athleticism and, can really get up and get after it. But Smith has a lot of intangibles, can be used in several different ways on defense, a good blitzer as well. So just brings a little bit more to the table when it comes to having an all-around safety than necessarily what Izzian can do.
Yeah, I would agree with that and definitely just say more consistency too from that position. Because you kind of saw Izzian last year. He had the 2 interceptions in the 2 games. And then he kind of, there was times where he disappeared. And so with Tyke Smith, the hope is that week to week, he brings more production there.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like Izzian was getting pass breakups or things like that as the season went on. And again, his hustle is great. I think he's a very solid tackler for his size as well. Smith just brings a bit more. And Tyke Smith, like I said, going to be one of the funnest guys that we watch this season. Let's keep it rolling, though, Adam. The next position we had was outside linebacker. What do you think about this group heading into the year, and why are they so stacked to be at number 2 on this list?
Yeah, so they're stacked because I think this is the position group with the most starting caliber players and potentially the most upside too when you look at it. So with the outside linebacker position, at the very least, heading into the season, like worst case scenario, there's one solid starter and 4 to 5 rotational guys that are going to work their way into the mix. Best case scenario, you have Yaya Diaby really emerging and taking that next step in a second season. And then looking at it, it could be Chris Braswell, who I know Scott Reynolds has kind of done a what if series. What if Chris
Yes.
Braswell has a similar rookie season to Yaya Diaby? Then all of a sudden you have two really promising edge rushers there. So really like the potential. And you have guys like Marquise Watts, who's pictured on the screen there, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Anthony Nelson. You kind of know what they provide, but they're very stable veterans. And I think just overall, when you look at this room, it's one where you're not really fretting that there isn't that star player because there's just so much quality depth that you can cycle in and out. You're not going to be relying on just one or two guys when there's 4 or 5 guys that can really make their mark.
Yeah, I don't think the Bucs necessarily have that, Shawn Michaels showstopper for the wrestling fans out there. They don't have like the Myles Garrett, the TJ Watt.
Yeah.
That is just going to dominate snap after snap. On third down, oh man, like that guy, he's coming through. He's about to, wreck stuff. Almost cursed there. He almost cussed, I should say. Almost, make a big type of impact like that. Yaya is very much on his way, and he could turn into that guy. He's got the look down for sure, but I don't think there's any shame. Thanks, John. Adam says, great HBK reference. I don't think there's any shame in having two great, like number 2 outside linebackers.
Yeah.
I think other teams in the past have like really been able to still shine with those moments. The question is, who is going to break out from the rest of that pack? Because last week I was saying it's Yaya and the Diabys, but they need one of the Diabys to become Marquise Watts or Jose Ramirez, or even JTS has an opportunity to make a name for himself for other teams around the league too.
Yeah.
So remember when they were talking about putting Joe Tryon-Shoyinka in like a Joker role in terms of like lining him up all over the place? I'm not totally against that, but I mean, is that just going to be his whole role with the team, or is it going to be half outside linebacker, half just kind of standing up in coverage? I'm curious how Todd Bowles will kind of go about it.
Yeah, and kind of like the point that you made there, where it's Yaya, and then everybody else is just kind of bunched together. You really want to see one of those guys really emerge and take that step to really be that starter, because you don't want a bunch of guys just getting 20% of the snaps. You want one guy to kind of take over that room as a number 2 and really provide more stability there. But on the basis of the argument of being the stacked position, you really like what you have to see and knowing all of the guys that are on the depth chart.
No question about it. And Scott Reynolds had, I guess we'll say, a bold take that Marquise Watts is going to end up starting against the opposite side, I should say, of Yaya Diaby. That is quite the leap. And I almost think, listen, I'm all for Marquise Watts getting more playing time, but is he going to be that electric that he jumps over Anthony Nelson and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka? I hope so. I think where kind of this gets a little bit murky is stacked versus just having guys that you trust enough to play. Because if it's just who do you trust the most to play, it probably is outside linebacker between Yaya, Watts. Really only Ramirez is the guy that like hasn't played at all, because Anthony Nelson, won a Super Bowl with this team, and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. But I want to see who becomes like the true impact player of this group. And I also wonder if at all does Randy Gregory play into the mix? Does he show up for training camp? Because there's got to be something where the Bucs still believe he can help this team in some nature, because why else wouldn't they just kind of like release him if he didn't show up for mandatory minicamp? All right. Like Randy Gregory is not Aaron Rodgers, where Rodgers can kind of do what he wants. And what are the Jets going to do? Like not have your starting quarterback? Randy Gregory is fighting to make this team against everybody else that we just mentioned, like he really needs to be here. We'll see what the reasons are. But Adam, you were there last week. Todd Bowles did not look happy. Like if it was a total mental health thing, which we obviously want to be observant of, and we want to like be understanding as well. If it's not a mental health thing, then I don't know why he's not here. And Todd Bowles did not seem happy.
No, he didn't. And you would imagine if it was something like serious, it would be Todd Bowles would have been more sympathetic and just saying, "Oh, he's not with the team right now." But Todd Bowles is like, "I'm just coaching the guys that are here," and it makes it sound like Gregory like either didn't want to be there or had some other conflict of interest. But it's interesting that he wasn't, because it gave young guys the opportunity to show up and really say that it's my roster spot, not yours. And with Randy Gregory at this point, it just kind of seems like it's an added bonus that he's on the roster. But the expectation has to be right now that the Bucs are rolling with the guys that were at mandatory minicamp, right?
Pretty much. That's really all Todd Bowles can do. Like this comment from A. Ruiz, who says Bucs need to sell Yaya jerseys. How are they not already? First of all, Yaya Diaby is the man. He's a 2-time recurring guest of the Pewter Report podcast. Also, obviously led the team in sacks last year, had a great run. The last thing I'll say is number 0 is a pretty cool number. Like it's a pretty badass number if we're being honest. And especially when it's a guy going after the quarterback, taking him down, that should really fly off the shelves. You know what I mean? So I'm a little surprised. I mean, I know you can get like customized jerseys and that, but kind of odd that Yaya does not have number 0 coming off the shelf.
And not just a jersey. I'd really want to see a tank top or something.
Yeah,
that's guns be showing off. Like, why not have a Yaya Diaby tank top?
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. We may have to pitch that to Yaya. Just some Yaya Diaby tanks. Emily says, "Hi everyone, just jumped in. Welcome to the show, Emily. Glad you could join us. What is up with Randy Gregory?" Yeah, we really don't know. Like we tried to find out behind the scenes. Obviously, Todd Bowles said what he said at minicamp. There's not really any updates. I think people want to link the lawsuit that Randy Gregory has against the NFL and be like, that's the reason why he's not at practice. But I don't necessarily see how it correlates. You know, like a player will get fined. It doesn't stop him from going to practice and vice versa. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. But you know, if Randy Gregory doesn't end up showing up, the Bucs still have a great rotation over at outside linebacker. Almost as good as a rotation that you can get of different flavors of Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. We always keep the vibes high on this show, and we highly recommend checking out all the different vibe flavors that Celsius has. You see on the screen there, the Galaxy, Cosmic, and Astro vibe. I'm a huge, huge fan of the Arctic vibe as well. That's probably my favorite of the bunch. Tropical and fantasy vibes are great. They also have a ton of original flavors as well. There's no sugar in Celsius energy drinks. It's also a great substitution for coffee if you want to get your day started the right way. I know a lot of times when I have an early morning, I get it going with Celsius energy drinks. So if you love Celsius and you haven't had one before and you want to try it out, you know where to find one. Go over to the Celsius store locator on their website. Punch in your address. And it'll tell you the closest location where you could pick one up. Could be a Walmart, health and fitness store, a Target, a 7-Eleven, or Adam, it might just be your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know that you love Celsius and you want to get more and you want to buy them in bulk, you can buy them in bulk. I'd recommend purchasing the variety pack because variety is the spice of life. And you heard me rattle off all the great flavors of Celsius energy drinks. Strawberry lemonade is great as well. But yeah, go to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save, and have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. All right, Adam, let's keep this train rolling. The next position that is most stacked for the Buccaneers, who do you have?
I have cornerback as being the most stacked
position.
Is that the one that you had?
So I went with defensive tackle, but I'm kind of all over the place with it now
Yeah,
because corner, if you're just comparing the starters, I think that's a very difficult. I mean, it's a good conversation, but it's a difficult discussion in the first place because you're essentially saying Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum versus Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey and kind of to a degree Logan Hall. Now, if it's 3-on-2, again, with wrestling, that'd be a handicap match, and that's not fair because then you have to throw in someone from cornerback. But the way defenses work, that's not always going to be the case. Now, if you look at the depth after it, that's where the discussion gets very interesting because at corner, you have a good thing going with Bryce Hall, who they just signed, and Tavier Thomas. And so you have some players that are available that are veterans and have experience. Same thing at defensive tackle, though, with Will
yeah,
Golston and Greg Gaines. Neither side really has that kind of like newcomer. They both have younger players with Logan Hall and with Zion McCollum at corner and Hall obviously at defensive tackle. But I think it's a good topic of discussion that can go a couple of different ways.
yeah, for sure. And if you're making the point of just looking at the top two at each position, I mean, you definitely go with Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey over Jamel Dean and
Yeah,
Zion McCollum. But when you look at the cornerback position, I think it's a duo, those two, that could really surprise. I mean, Jamel Dean, there's a reason that he got a 4-year, $52 million contract. He played really well back in the 2022 season. Last year was kind of hampered by some injuries, and just his availability wasn't there. If he can stay on the field consistently this year, I think you could see Jamel Dean really start making a scene again. It's been a while since he's been getting interceptions, and I think he really needs to do that and also shut down the top receivers because Carlton Davis, he long kind of had that role famously against Jamar Chase. So you look at Jamel Dean really taking that step from being like a 1B to a 1A corner. And then also Zion McCollum, I think there's a lot of excitement for him that he has that full-time role now. He doesn't need to kind of wait in the wings behind Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. He can really claim that starting outside corner spot. And when you look at players across the roster that have the most potential, I know we mentioned
yeah,
it on the last show on Monday, you'd buy stock in Zion McCollum. I mean, when you build a corner, kind of like you build an outside linebacker with Yaya Diaby, you'd build Zion McCollum. I mean, the guy has great speed, great size. He just needs that production. And he has all the tools kind of there to do so. So you look at both of those guys, I think there's a lot to like. You mentioned Bryce Hall and Tavier Thomas kind of being those veterans like
yeah.
on standby, just in case one of those guys gets injured. You would have confidence in them. And then also there's Josh Hayes, who kind of was a special teams ace last year. Maybe he gets more playing time. I think on the basis of it being like stacked position group, I would give corner the slight edge to defensive tackle, although defensive tackle probably has more star power there.
I think the star power is fair. Let me ask you this. Who do you feel more confident in staying healthier this year? Jamel Dean or Vita Vea / Kalijah Cansey? I guess let's just say Vita Vea.
Yeah. Ooh, between the two, I'd probably give the slight edge to Vita Vea just for having lost the weight.
Is it?
I feel like that.
Yeah, it's because he slimmed down.
I would say so. That's an underrated aspect is just the less pressure on the joints, especially with the foot and ankle injuries. I would probably say him just because Jamel Dean, it seemed like every game he was kind of getting a little injury that would keep him out for a little bit, or week to week his status would kind of be in the air. So at the moment, I'd probably say Vita Vea.
I would say Vita too. I think working out with Ndamukong Suh this off season, he's giving him advice in so many different ways, but I think Vita, for whatever reason, is taking it even more serious this year about I need to stay in my prime. I need to be here for the team. And it's another thing too, where I don't think the Bucs necessarily have to rely on Vita Vea to do everything. Like even a couple of years ago, remember Vita was. I like this comment from Bat W. Says Vita is the anchor and Antoine Winfield Jr. is our attack dog. I think, yeah, to a degree, that is
Yeah.
the case. But Vita led the team in sacks a couple years ago, and I almost think that's not a good thing. What I want to see for Vita and Kalijah Kancey is I want them to be that amazing run-stopping duo that that him and Ndamukong Suh were when they were in their prime as a duo. Not obviously Suh was kind of past his prime with the Buccaneers, but I want to see them be the guys that can stop the run, really just force like a 3rd and long almost every single time that their opponent is on the field. Because, there was a great article the other day by Adam Rank of the NFL Network and NFL.com, obviously. And he was doing like a whole write-up of the Buccaneers and, players to look at and things of that nature. And he started talking about the Bucs defensive line and all of that stuff. And he pretty much said, why would teams run against the Bucs when the Bucs have been like in the top 10 of worst passing defense since Todd Bowles has been in Tampa Bay, both as a defensive coordinator and as now their head coach too. So you hear a statement like that, you read it and you go, oh, well, the secondary must have had a ton of issues. They certainly were not perfect. And I think they should, shoulder a lot of blame, especially for that loss against the Texans last year that the Bucs should have been victorious in. But I think you could also point finger at just the lack of, pass rush by the Buccaneers and getting a push up front. And I think Vita and Kalijah can both stop the run and go and take a step up from what Vita and Suh were, where like Suh had his moments with sacks, but they weren't like crazy consistent. I think Kalijah Kancey can be a better defensive tackle pass rusher than maybe than Ndamukong Suh was when he was with Tampa Bay. I know it's like a little bold to say, but I mean he's got some good damn moves when he's down there in the trenches, and it makes it that much easier when he is when it's going to be a 3rd and 8 or whatever, and the pass is coming. Also, a fully healthy Kalijah Kancey, I think that could do numbers as well.
Yeah, and the fact that he had 4 sacks in 14 games last year, it's really hard for a defensive tackle to really hit the ground running, especially for a guy like Kancey who missed the start of the regular season and still had such an impact in providing regular pressure to the quarterback, and also had double-digit tackles for loss. I mean, he was a menace. So I think you make a great point in saying, like Vita Vea, you don't really want to see him lead the team in sacks, but if he can get back to that run-stuffing way where he's just the true anchor, as mentioned in the comment there, up the middle, it'll also provide Kalijah Kancey more opportunities to get after the quarterback. And Kalijah Kancey, I think him and Yaya are one of the better like duos in the league in terms of young defensive players, and both of them could really be double-digit sackers next year, because you look at Kalijah Kancey, he just has a very skilled pass rushing set of moves. And I think with Vita Vea there's no better person to have as a complement, and both of them could really be quite the duo.
They obviously have a great skill set on the defensive line. What I don't know is how good is their skill set playing volleyball, and particularly pool volleyball. Now you're wondering, why am I asking how good they are at pool volleyball? Well, there is a chance that you might see them at the next Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise, where pool volleyball is a big, big event on that trip.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr! Arr!
Join the fun with hundreds of Bucs fans on the 3rd annual Tampa Bay Bucs Cruise, which sets sail March 7th through the 10th in 2025 on the beautiful Celebrity Silhouette ship. This is a 3-night cruise that begins in Fort Lauderdale and visits Key West and Bimini in the Bahamas. Last year's cruise had Yaya Diaby, Rashad White, Greg Gaines, Luke Gedeke, Kate Otten, Jamel Dean, Christian Isian, Super Bowl 37 MVP Dexter Jackson, Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, Gene Deckerhoff, the voice of the Buccaneers, and many others. Even more players are expected next year, as well as a special guest by none other than Derek Brooks. There will be photo and autograph opportunities with players, a Raise the Flags, sail away party, VIP parties with the players, special player interviews, a water volleyball challenge, which I'm very, very excited for the water volleyball challenge. Yaya Diaby, last time he was on the show, he was talking about the cruise, and he played with a chip on his shoulder, very much like how Baker Mayfield does, because he wasn't picked first, and he felt he was the finals MVP of the volleyball game that went on. So who knows? Maybe he'll get to play against Yaya Diaby. And there will also be Bucs trivia contest and fun games and more. So reserve your cabin now on the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, where drinks, including alcohol, Wi-Fi, and tips are all included with a $200 deposit per person. This is refundable until August 16th. So visit TampaBayBucsCruise.com. That's TampaBayBucsCruise.com, or give them a call at 1-800-975-7112. That's 1-800-975-7112. I want to go back to that article again real quick before we kind of talk about the last position, or one of the last positions. Because I did an article on PeterReport.com, the most important Bucs player besides quarterback, because we know in the NFL, yes, it's a team game. Yes, it's very important to have a great roster all over. But a lot of the wins and losses are going to be decided by the quarterback position. Doesn't mean that if you have an average quarterback, you can't go and win the Super Bowl. I think the Bucs kind of proved that with their first Super Bowl victory in when they won with Brad Johnson. But I think with the Bucs' second Super Bowl victory, you can also show when you have a great quarterback how far your team can go. But anyway, so in this article, it had Antoine Winfield Jr. as the most important non-quarterback for the Buccaneers. No argument there. I mean, he's an all-pro. But I'm just the paragraph that was used, I thought was quite interesting, because it says the Buccaneers tagged Winfield and then signed him to a long-term deal, which they needed to do. Cornerback Carlton Davis, safety Ryan Neal, and linebacker Devin White are no longer with the team, which could be a concern for a defense that allowed the fourth most passing yards per game last season. Tampa Bay was pretty good against the run, but why would teams run against this defense? The Bucs have been a bottom 12 pass defense in 4 of the 5 seasons under Todd Bowles as defensive coordinator or head coach, and he's been with the team from 2019 and became the head coach in 2022. I mean, the first thing that stands out is saying that it's a concern for the Bucs that they lost Ryan Neal and Devin White. And I want to be respectful because it's a national writer, and you got to look at all of these teams. But I mean, come on. Ryan Neal has been persona non grata. Yeah, like it's one of those, and Ryan Neal's a good person, but it's addition by subtraction with Ryan Neal no longer being there. And again, that kind of goes back to why safety is so stronger, because they put a lot of attention into safety this offseason with Jordan Whitehead and Tyke Smith. Those are 2 brand new additions. So I don't think the Bucs are losing any sleep over Ryan Neal not being there. In fact, and I said this to Josh Capo yesterday, Adam, Ryan Neal's biggest contribution to the Bucs last year was when he moved to linebacker because everybody was injured and they had no other choices. The best contribution Tyke Smith and Jordan Whitehead will give to the Bucs this year is playing at safety.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Ryan Neal, though, at inside linebacker. That was his best game by far.
That was a great game. Did a nice Zoom interview after? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. But just kind of speaking on that point, with there being concerned that those 3 are gone, we kind of already mentioned the safety position, but talking about Devin White and his replacements are the inside linebacker. And so that was 4th on my list of most stacked positions because you have Levante David being one half of the equation.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out the other half. Who's that going to be? But KJ Britt down the stretch, after he started filling in on the game against the Packers, he was better than Devin White was all of last year. KJ Britt, I thought he was very solid. He's an energetic leader, sure tackler, very stoutly built. You know what you have in him. And then also there is some intrigue with the other guys behind him. Servassier Dennis, Kalen DeLoach. And Kalen DeLoach is already getting praise from Levante David. Even though he's a smaller linebacker, there's been a lot of excitement building around him and what he can do as an undrafted free agent. And then still you have J.J. Russell, who in that game against the Panthers when Ryan Neal filled in, J.J. Russell was the other guy that filled in, and he even had a sack. So there's a lot of quality players at the inside linebacker position. Just kind of wanted to touch on that. Wow, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so even though inside linebacker ends up kind of last in these rankings, I still feel pretty good at this position versus like how I feel about the Bucs interior offensive line if we're going back to, talking about the offense. Obviously, Levante David is a stud. He's going to be in the Bucs Ring of Honor one day, and his importance to this defense is absolutely paramount. They need Levante to stay healthy and, obviously run the ship over there at inside linebacker. Really, there's two questions for me when it comes to this position. One, and they kind of like flow into each other. It'll make more sense when I say it. But KJ Britt, this will be his first season as a full-time starter. Sometimes there's a beginner's luck type of thing. Sometimes when it's only a shorter period of time, it's easier to say, hey, he stood out here and there. But once you play a full now 17-game season, the tape is going to be out on you. There's going to be way more things that you experience, way more things that, even though as detailed and prepared that KJ Britt is, he might not even see coming. So can he hold up? Can he stay consistent? Because that was the big thing for KJ Britt, which is why Devin White is no longer with the Buccaneers, was the inconsistency of Devin White. We loved when Devin White had an interception against the Eagles in that first game, even though they ended up losing. We loved when Devin White could blitz and get to the quarterback. But if you have those two good moments and then 5 other, missed assignments, missed tackle, not getting to the quarterback, the bad far outweighed the good with Devin White. With KJ Britt, the solid consistency, tackling, being there, hitting the hole when the running back gets there and making the tackle, those are all very consistent when he was in. Now, the second part of this and where it kind of flows together is part of the struggle and / issue for KJ Britt was his ability to drop back in coverage. Will this be a situation where, Levante David can protect a lot of things. He cleaned up a lot of stuff for Devin. He'll do it for everyone, and it's not even necessarily the fault of Devin White and KJ Britt, guys like that. It just shows how good Levante David is as a linebacker. But there's only so many things Levante can do where other opponents will pick on KJ Britt. So that leads to the next question of, will the Bucs kind of go with the rotation that we want to see an outside linebacker with, if Marquise Watts is bad at stopping the run, just play Marquise Watts on third down so he can go into the quarterback. If Servassier Dennis, who also a friend of the program that we've had on the show, if Servassier is pretty stout in his coverage, which we saw in minicamp last year and rookie minicamp, his ability to take the ball away. When he's dropping back in coverage, he's able to do pretty good things. I don't know necessarily if he's a 3-down back just yet, but he came on the show and he went into great detail about a specific 4th down play that the Colts ran, and he knew it was coming and he was trying to call it out and everything like that. I mean, pretty instinctual, right? For a rookie who was, again, coming in a pinch, wasn't really expected in that moment, but had to. I don't hate the idea of, and even though you're kind of throwing it out there for everybody to see and opponents will know, okay, KJ Britt is 1st and 2nd down and Servassier Dennis is on 3rd down. If it forces teams to throw it more on 1st and 2nd down, then whatever, so be it. But I wouldn't hate the rotation of having Servassier Dennis just come in on 3rd down and be a pass coverage linebacker. there's no rule in the NFL rule book that says like a starter has to play the whole time. Like other things can come in and come out, other players, other formations, things of that nature. And you see it all the time in the secondary and the defensive line. But for whatever reason, linebacker just feels like, like they're the starters. They have to stay in the whole time. And that's not the case. Now, Kalen DeLoach obviously had a lot of buzz around him, played at Florida State. Many fans in this area, or really just the state of Florida, are aware of what he did. He's lived up to the billing so far. He hasn't even been able to show some of his best traits because there's been no shoulder pads and physicality and tackling. But as far as coverage-wise goes, which is really all you're looking for with linebackers at this time of the year when the Bucs have OTAs and minicamp, what's not to like about Kalen DeLoach, what he's brought to the team? And then J.J. Russell, a guy that's really fought hard year in and year out, hustle, showed that he could start a game or play significant time for a brief period of time. Again, we have the Bucs inside linebackers last in this room, but I don't hate what they're bringing. Now, a lot of this teeters on KJ Britt and Servassier Dennis, and I don't know if you want to put all the trust in the world in an undrafted free agent in Kalen DeLoach.
Right.
But this is a team and a position, I should say, that later on in the season could easily rise up the ranks.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you make a great point in talking about the linebacker rotation, because you have third down running backs, right? You have third down pass rushers. Why can't it be a third down inside linebacker? And especially in such a pass-driven league with like the nickel position being so valued, why not have a pass coverage like specialist up the middle? And Servassier Dennis could really fit that role. Really excited to see Kalen DeLoach maybe fitting that role as well. Last year, you saw Christian Izien really take the reins as an undrafted rookie. And that's not to say that Kalen DeLoach will, but it shows that Todd Bowles isn't afraid to put trust in undrafted rookies, guys that maybe slip through the cracks. But with Kalen DeLoach, there's even kind of the possibility he can be in the secondary. I mean, he's built very similar to Antoine Winfield Jr., runs a 4.47, and has pass coverage ability. I mean, Todd Bowles, he has to be really looking forward to using that kind of player in his defense. So you have the inside linebacker room, as you said, it very well could rise up the ranks because, very similar argument to the safety position where you have Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, you know what he's going to bring. But if one of the other guys can really just take that next step, or maybe it's two guys, I think this room could be a really good one.
Right. It doesn't have to just be one player. It could be several players. But you mentioned trust a moment ago. And yeah, it's so important. Like the players on the field have to trust each other, whether it's the same position or linebacker to safety or whatever it may be. The coaches got to trust the players to get the job done. When it comes to managing your money, too, you want to trust those that you're working with. And there's no better people to trust and work with than Muni Financial.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude, congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Muni Financial has proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980. They can help you out with a number of different things, from brokerage services to investment banking, insurance services, sales and trading, and can help you with other stuff like if you want to set up a college account for your child, if they want to go to college one day, they are the perfect people to work with. And you saw in the little commercial there, yes, they have a place in Colorado. Yes, they have a place in Tampa, but they have Muni Financials all over. You could be in upstate New York. You could be in, Oregon or Washington or New Hampshire or Texas or Oklahoma, where Baker Mayfield's probably chilling. They have Muni Financials all over. So give them a call. Get a free consultation. It's absolutely free, so it doesn't hurt in any way, shape, or form. Check out Muni Financial and tell them Pewter Report sent you. That's Muni Financial. Got a good question from Pete, who asked, are the Bucs going to be a top 10 defense this year? I think that's a very good question. Adam, feel free to tackle this one first. See, I said tackle because we're talking about the defense.
I like it. So I definitely think that the Bucs are going to have a better defense than they did last year. I feel like all of the weaknesses last year, whether it was personnel or I don't know, just kind of some of the mistakes that they had, I think they've worked to correct them in very quality ways. Like outside linebacker, they knew it was a weakness. They flooded the room. The secondary at this other safety spot, they got Jordan Whitehead and Tyke Smith at inside linebacker. I feel like at each position group, they've really addressed their needs. And so for that reason, I think they're going to be better. Now, when you look at being a top 10 defense, there's still some things that have to go right there. I mean, Jamel Dean, he can't really be missing the time that he did last year, especially with Carlton Davis gone. There's more trust in him. On the topic of trust, Todd Bowles is trusting Jamel Dean to be the number 1 corner. You're hoping that Zion McCollum could be the number 2 corner. With Vita Vea, can he be healthy all year? Can Kalijah Cansey take the next step? With Yaya Diaby, there is some level of uncertainty to really say that as of right now, they're going to be a top 10 defense. The potential is there, but there's still some variables there where it needs to go right. Otherwise, it's kind of going to be, I would say maybe more middle of the pack, but definitely in the top half of the league for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's several ways to kind of dissect what being a top 10 defense means. You know, if you want to go by yards per game, and I don't think, by the way, that it should just be like, hey, look at the stats and that determines everything, because there's so many different underlying factors. But with that said, like allowing yards per game, the Bucs were 23rd in the league with 344 per game. And that was kind of the MO of the defense. Like, hey, just allow everything underneath you. And that's kind of like how Todd Bowles rolls. Damn, that rhymes. I didn't even try to do that.
Look at you.
However, points per game, which many would argue is the most important thing, because if you score more points than the other team, then obviously your organization, you win more 100% of the time when you score more points than the other team. They allowed 19.1 points per game, which was in the top 10. It actually puts them 7th overall, tied for 6th with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Turnovers was another area where the Bucs weren't overall, fantastic. They ended up with 26. That kind of puts them middle of the pack. But then sacks, again, like they're a top 10 defense, even though a lot of people complained about how they were getting to the quarterback last year. So there's so many ways to look at it. I think blitzing wise, like Todd Bowles will have enough schemes and everything to make the Bucs fine. You certainly want to see them kind of improve getting to a 4-man pass rush, but there's always room for improvement. There's always ways to make this team better. But to answer the question, yes, I do think that they will be a top 10 defense. I think they'll kind of teeter around 9 or 10. I'm not going to say they're going to be a top 5, but the way I feel about the additions to this defense, I think there's a lot of potential to be a top 10 defense. Now, when it comes to buying a home and working with a realtor, you want the number 1. You don't want the top 10. You want the number 1 person. And there's no better realtor to work with than Eric Gross and the Eric Gross Group, the official realty group of pewterreport.com. It takes a full team effort to win a football game, and it takes a full team effort to win in real estate. The Eric Gross Group has done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market and has experience in all types of situations. With their strong group of vendors and a network of over 85,000 agents, the Eric Gross Group will turn your dream of buying or selling a home into a reality. Their clients are not just transactions, they are lifelong friendships. So don't let the stress of buying or selling a home keep you out of the game. Let the Eric Gross Group take the pressure off. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Eric Gross Group. Check out their website, housesinfla.com, or give them a call at 513-907-4271. That's 513-907-4271. No matter where you are on your home ownership journey, you'll feel welcome with the Eric Gross Group, the official realty group of pewterreport.com. All right, that just about wraps it up for us on today's show. We had a great week of episodes. I know a lot of people were asking about Scott. He had to take off this week, had some stuff to take care of, but he's all good. Nothing to worry about. Everything is fine. He will be back next week, so everybody will get their dose of SR. But had a lot of fun this week. We had pretty much all the Pewter Report podcast on. Adam, you were on twice. We had Josh Capo on Tuesday. We had Bailey Adams on Tuesday. We had Josh Capo on Wednesday, and you started and ended with Monday and Thursday. So great week of shows. If you missed any of them, you can catch them on our YouTube channel. Please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report. And, of course, our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV, where we do the show 4 times a week. We have various clips from practice and other press conferences and all these great stuff that the Bucs do. We have a ton of opinion pieces as well. So please like, subscribe, leave a comment as well. Which position group you think is the most stacked for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? We love getting all your feedback, so please do so. All right, that's going to do it for us this week. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you all on Monday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.